If this report is true, the U.S. is no longer talking about striking Iran here. It's talking about sending forces in to just grab the nuclear stockpile itself.
The U.S. is weighing sending special forces to seize Iran's nuclear stockpile. According to the report, the U.S. and Israel have discussed sending the troops to secure the country's highly enriched uranium at a later stage in the conflict. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz signaled this may be under consideration.
Unlike his predecessors, both Obama and Biden, President Trump is never going to take options off the table. I'm a former special operator. We have troops and assets that are focused on seizing weapons of mass destruction if needed and if so ordered.
Joining us now is former Navy SEAL and author of The Fourth Option, Jack Carr. Jack, thanks for joining us. I think it'd be important to point out you also wrote an amazing book on Beirut, just in your words and probably my opinion, kind of the root cause of a lot of this, or at least the opening salvo. When we talk about this, I think a lot of Americans don't understand military strategy, as they shouldn't. I understand that. But we use this term boots on the ground, and I think everyone goes to a vision of 100,000 troops sitting at al-Assad. And I think that this conversation is both premature and it's kind of semantics because it goes in a completely different direction. We're talking about using strategic units to accomplish strategic goals, not unlike what we saw in Venezuela, where we find out after they're in and out less than setting up bases and that kind of thing, or at least that's how it seems to me.
Right.
Well, that's right. And I saw that video of Ambassador Mike Waltz earlier talking about this. And of course, those of us who are on the ground there, as soon as we hear boots on the ground, we're immediately skeptical. But in this one here, one of our main objectives is to ensure that Iran will never have a nuclear weapons capability. That has been a pillar of U.S. foreign policy across multiple administrations from both parties. And use the Venezuela example. There's another example from about a year and a half ago where the Israelis mounted a very audacious special operations mission into Syria. And the purpose of that mission was to go inside underground into a Hezbollah precision missile facility and blow it up from the inside. So they had pre-assault fires, they had standoff weapon systems that took out early warning radars and anti-aircraft devices. They went in, dropped about 100 special operators off who went inside, blew it up from the inside, also destroyed a Russian listening post, interestingly enough, and captured a couple Iranian scientists who were also there in Syria. So similar to what our special operations forces and Israel's would probably face in Iran if they go there to, and I know Mike Waltz said to seize these facilities, but seizing and destroying are different. I mean, he might just be thinking about his language, being very careful about it, because when you seize this, how long do you then hold it for?
Right,
but
exactly.
I suspect both U.S. Special Operations Forces and Israeli Special Operations Forces are forward deployed, ready to go to carry out this mission if tasked to do so. But really, it's the Midnight Hammer from last June. It didn't destroy the nuclear weapons capability there. The reports I saw said it severely degraded it, but didn't destroy it. So then option two is to go in and destroy that from the inside.
I stood by that the entirety of the time this has happened. Like, listen, I understand Trump is an individual that definitely wants, like, when he speaks large, right? If that makes any sense here. But the reports that were coming basically from the ground and from the area were basically saying nearly the exact opposite here. So I'm definitely glad someone else with like actual authority kind of in the realm of things here is saying this, because yes, guys, listen, when we struck them, we struck what we could basically strike. That did not mean that the entirety of the actual system itself was basically 100% degraded. Yes, it was degraded slightly, but the things that were definitely harder to find, harder to see, are most likely still there. So if we're going to go in, I'm definitely glad that it's not going to be like full-scale boots on the ground, because again, I'm not sure what we're going to do with 650,000 Iranian ground troops, but something super strategic, similar to exactly what we did in Venezuela, makes all the sense in the world.
With all of your knowledge and expertise and lived experience, I just ask you to talk to the American people who are hearing certain buzzwords on TV, and they're hearing it from other networks and other pundits, and they're hearing boots on the ground, and they're hearing weapons of mass destruction, and they're getting a little bit uncomfortable. Could you kind of reassure to the best of your ability the American people who feel like they've heard this before and they've seen this song and dance? Does this feel different to you?
Well, it does feel different, but it's also we have 20 years. Our most recent experience, other than Venezuela and a couple other flashpoints, is Iraq and Afghanistan. And although there's not one model that you can apply to every situation in the world, when we hear WMD and then we hear someone say regime change and then we hear boots on the ground, then we all start to get a little bit nervous. What the hope is, and hope is never a good course of action, is that we take those lessons from the past, specifically from Iraq, and apply them to the current problem set as wisdom. We're using weapons that have never been used before in modern combat. And so this is about adapting in real time to changing conditions on the ground, because once again, you can't just take a model and drop it into a current situation and expect everything to play out the way it has in the past, because everyone is always adapting. And it's important to adapt faster than our enemy, because typically whoever adapts faster on the battlefield is going to end up on top tactically, and we need our strategic level leaders to do the same thing at their level.
And Jack, it's Joe Concha. If I told you a year ago that 9 days in that we would decimate the Iranian military in the capacity that we have in terms of ballistic missiles, in terms of their Navy being essentially not even a factor now at this point, in terms of everything, especially with Midnight Hammer and not destroying completely their nuclear capabilities, but certainly damaging it and setting it back years and years, what would you have told me? And I guess it's a two-part question. If we were to send special ops into areas to take out the nuclear facilities completely, how long would a mission like that take? So sorry, a bunch of questions there for you.
Yeah, well, the first one there, if you'd asked me a couple years ago about what this situation would look like, I'd probably go back to history and I'd say that we hadn't fought total war in a very long time, and that appears, although we're not doing it now, we're getting closer to doing that. We have been very reserved in how we have applied our military force. We haven't been very smart about how we've done that by placing our boots on the ground in harm's way, making them targets, giving the enemy a propaganda victory over us almost every single day in both Iraq and Afghanistan as those situations developed on the ground. So this is much closer to total war, although it is not yet there. But we are using the military capability, it looks like now, to its fullest extent, while taking into account, of course, the collateral damage, which we didn't think so much about in World War II, or if we thought about it, there weren't ways to mitigate that. On the second one, how long would something like that take? Well, I go back to that Israeli example because it is just a year and a half ago, and there are so many similarities to going into an underground hardened type bunker system that is protecting a weapons system that needs to be destroyed from the inside out. So that one, they were in and out of there in hours. Wow. But seizing, of course, is different than going in and then destroying or holding. So all those things are different. And once again, it comes down to adaptation.
I think he needs to definitely be on TV a lot more, kind of speaking about all of the things that he basically knows here. Because I agree with him 100%. And I generally don't agree with people kind of on first listen. I normally push back really hard consistently. But I definitely respect every single thing that he says here. I think he seems to be like legitimately a voice of reason in a time that is absolutely not really reasonable here. It's definitely a lot smarter not throwing people, meaning American soldiers specifically, kind of into harm's way. In Iran, on the ground, large scale at least, right? Just look back at all the propaganda that was basically being spread when they would capture soldiers and absolutely do literal craziness to them. And we're definitely playing it in a very strategic manner these days here by bringing in multiple carrier strike groups, basically locking down the entire airspace that's surrounding them. And once we can do that, we can then obviously kind of by default get in a small team to do something really important. All right. I think that is a little bit more intelligent than, again, going in large scale on the ground. It just doesn't make much sense here. That is a lot of land mass. I do have a couple of worries, though. I get it. He's saying that this is like total war, kind of, right? But not like full scale war, similar to like 1939, 40, 41, etc., that era of things here. Because again, the last thing we really need is for our troops to be used as propaganda, because they're already utilizing some of the strikes that we've already done in Iran as propaganda, based off of where they are deciding to themselves strategically place, armament, let's say this year, that they are firing at us, and they're surprised that we then reciprocate by destroying the location that they're firing from. But it just so happens that the location that they're firing from, without our literal knowledge of the location, is a school. Okay. It's inside of a neighborhood. So they're still finding a way to legitimately utilize these things for propaganda. This is what they do. And we definitely need to find a way to no longer give them ground to facilitate further propaganda.